Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I am your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome visual content creator Annie Michaelis to the show. Welcome, Annie.
Hi, great to be here.
Great to meet you and talk to you today. We've been emailing listeners for you to know. We've been emailing back and forth, and Annie, it's finally great to talk to the filmmaker. I'm also a filmmaker on the side, so it's nice to talk to somebody who's also been pursuing it as a career. So you have this passion for film that clearly comes out in all the things that you had been sending me, all the films you've been making. So I love seeing that. Where did you get that passion for film originally? Did your parents encourage you, or did you just find a film and, man, you were hooked from that moment on?
Well, I think it all started with, I think it was my 11th birthday. My mom got me one of those like Panasonic really cheap video cameras, and I would film like my Barbies and write plays for them. So I actually didn't know that I wanted to go into film right away. I decided to just take some film classes because I was interested in screenwriting, actually. And I loved the screenwriting program because I went to Eastern Washington University. And then I needed to pick a major. And I'm like, well, I love film, so I love the classes so far, so let's go for it. So I kind of jumped into it, not really knowing what I was going for, just that I really enjoyed screenwriting. And then suddenly I was taking production classes and realized that I really liked making films as well, editing and shooting, and I got really lucky, honestly, for going into it so blind.
Well, did you also study film? Like, did you like watching films in particular just to understand, why there were different angles, different cuts, different shots?
Yeah, I did that in school. That was in the production classes. And I actually, honestly, hadn't been a major movie person. I liked movies, but I know that you're a Disney fan, and I'm a Disney fan too. So I grew up a lot with watching animated films and loving animation. And so learning more about live action and also working with actors on set, because we learned a lot in class, which is, what you were saying, the cuts and the lighting and stuff. But then we put that all to use and did sets and small short videos. So yeah, it was definitely has been an experience. And like I said, I'm really lucky that it all turned out for me.
Are you more involved with, you like that technical aspect of making the film, it sounds like, as opposed to, just sitting and watching films and observing. You like really digging in and figuring out what makes it look good and what makes it work and click.
Yes, that is a great way to put it. Thank you. Yeah.
No. Because I feel like some people just go for the production and, the making of, and I totally admire that. I think it's even something for me when I took some film classes. I didn't understand all of the technical aspects that go into making different projects. It's difficult. It's really hard. I just think it's as seamless as it looks, but it is not.
Yeah, you learn a lot of stuff, and that I notice now when I watch films. I'm like, wow, they did not actually record that live. They redid that. Because like when they match the words to the mouth, Yeah,
they do like the, what is it, ADRs, and then also the sound effects, like people walking. I was watching a film, and I since I edit so much in sound, I can absolutely hear when something is looped or dubbed. It drives me crazy, but then you can also tell that it's not like current sound in the room, like fire from the fireplace, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can never watch movies really the same once you start to learn all those little things that you do in film school or taking classes.
Exactly.
It's a good thing and bad thing.
Exactly. It's a blessing. It's a curse. But it only helps along the way when you're making other films. So, did you ever have a specific film that you really adored, and something that also was just sometimes you keep it in the back of your mind when you're working on your own projects and being like, this is kind of where I'm going for tone-wise, or the way I'd like the scene to play out, or that type of thing, when you're just referencing?
Well, there was a movie that I watched when I was younger, and it really isn't a young person movie. I think it's a little bit older. It's like a romantic comedy. It's called Waitress. It has Kerry Russell in it.
Oh, wow. Yes, I love that film.
Yeah, well, that one, I love how character-driven it is, and I really was captured by the setting and just the slice of life. Like, I know that you watched my short film that I made, which is called Slice of Life, and It was pretty much based on that film, just taking everyday people and really making it, I guess, cinematic in a sense. It's taking the ordinary and making it so that people can watch it and enjoy it, but also reflect. Oh, another one. Sorry, going off. Dan in Real Life. Do you know that one? It has...
I've heard about it, and I haven't seen it yet. Who is in it again? I can't remember.
Steve Carell or Carol. Is it Carell?
That's it. Yeah, Steve
Okay.
Carell. You're right. Yes.
Yes.
I remember hearing about it, and I never got to see it, and I was kind of bummed because I love him.
Yeah. It's just the everyday things in life that they film and can make just so interesting that you can relate to. I just love that in a film. Just taking simple stories, simple, and that's what I try to bring, in my own works. That's what I try to go for.
And I'm glad you mentioned your slice of life short, because we're going to talk about that, and also scraps. I'm hoping we can put those links in the show notes below to for listeners to check out themselves. So you like to cover real stories, as we've discussed, with the documentary of Scraps, and also fictional ones that are more dramatic, which is slice of life. So what do you feel you're leaning more towards? The realistic, more of a documentary style, or do you like having that aspect of being able to write something and create something new and just have it be a little bit more fictitious?
They're both good. I tend to lean more towards documentary because it's so... there's only so much planning you can do, and I kind of like that excitement that you can plan all the shots, you can plan the days that you're going to go into film, but you're working with real people or like real life, dogs and cats and stuff, and so there's a sense of you don't know what you're going to get, which is scary but also really exciting for me. Whereas with the ones where you write it and you can get really, it can be flawless, because you can take the script and break it down and make sure the characters know their lines, the actors know their lines, and you can put in so much pre-production. But at the same time, I think that it's also a little bit harder to get that honesty, if that makes sense, from the actors, where when you're doing a documentary and you're using real people, they might be a little bit camera shy. They might not be acting as they normally would, as if there wasn't a camera in their face. But after a while, you get to really know that person because it's them instead of someone playing someone. But
correct.
They're
yes.
both. It's both great. I like them both, but documentary, sometimes it's just a little bit more honest, but then you get like the really good actors who can completely nail it, and it's like, wow, okay, this is great. So
it's a nice mixture of the two when you're going for both. It's a good thing that we don't need to choose what we have to do all the time as just one thing. And on top of the documentary, you mentioned a good point. It's like you have no idea. You could have something set up and say, I want to get from A to B with this story, but when you get these other tidbits and information from other people, it can craft an entirely different story that you have to now edit together.
Mm-hmm. But I've never had like a terrible documentary experience. Well, I'll elaborate. I feel like you can go in and make a story out of pretty much anything when it comes to documentary, because the people are just so interesting and people love watching people. Like that's what film is.
It's nice because it seems like you are going for, with Scraps in particular, with that documentary, you were trying to give voice to, a group that is trying to assist and help animals in particular. So I guess in no pun intended, you go for the underdog, basically. Right?
Awesome.
Would you think that?
Yes. I think a part of documentary is also, like you said, you have, as a filmmaker, you have a lot of control. These are, real people's lives. And as an editor, filmmaker, you can kind of choose how they're portrayed. So I think that there's a moral aspect that a lot of filmmakers and documentarians have to keep in mind when they, and it's the same thing with the news or any type of visual media. There's definitely a responsibility there. I try to be unbiased when it comes to stuff like that. But there's a lot of power in visual media as well as editing. So it's always good to keep that in mind. I love mysteries, and I didn't actually get into true crime stuff until recently, but Netflix is Making a Murderer. I got into that just recently, and in my opinion, they're a little bit biased, but I still, at that point, it really doesn't matter, because, again, that's the power of film, is you can watch it and you can think one way, and because they're presenting it definitely in a certain way. They're trying to be unbiased, but no matter what, there's that line of choosing, what facts to present to the audience. So, but yeah, that one, I like how quick it goes. The episode's about an hour, but because it's so interesting and they choose their content wisely, it never feels like an hour.
Where does your inspiration come to classify and create a new original story?
Like I said, I've always kind of been a writer. I love, what should I say? Sometimes they just come to me. Again, I'm inspired generally by real life. I have a little journal that I bring with me. I actually have a lot of journals, but this one is a very small journal that I bring with me. And if I just get inspired by something in everyday life, sometimes it's a conversation. I commute on the bus a lot going to school. And if you don't wear your earphones, like, I know that it's tempting, to listen to music all the time and stuff. But if you take them out and you listen, and I don't think that it's necessarily snooping, like Nancy would say. It's, it's observing other people's conversations, and you can hear a lot. And sometimes I'll get an idea for a plot, a storyline, or a character, even just your surroundings as well, like environment. Sometimes I'll get inspired by the environment for a setting, and setting, honestly, really, it contributes a lot to story. I think that that's why the Nancy Drew games are so good too, because there is such attention to location and detail and setting, no matter where they are. So much research too goes into it that you can really feel like you're there. And that's important in any story or film, is to really make it believable for one, your actors who are in that setting, and two, the audience who are going to watch it.
Now, working at Her Interactive, how did you hear about the job, and what was that job interview like for you?
Oh, this is a story. So I, like I said, I went to Eastern. I got my BA in film, and I actually, a little bit backstory, I did Running Start for 2 years. It's something that I think the whole Washington offers. I'm not entirely sure though, but you take 2 years of college, your junior and senior year of high school. So when I graduated high school, I had my AA degree in college. And like I said, I kind of just picked film on a whim because I needed to, I had my 2 years done at, 18. And so I just kind of picked film on a whim because I had taken some classes and I'm like, okay, this is pretty fun. I could see myself doing this. And so I jumped into that. I finished my 2 years and I actually got I got super scared about the job because when you pick your BA in film, there's a lot of talk about Hollywood. It's all about Hollywood. It's all about making the movies. And I think that is awesome, but I knew that I was not ready to go down to California and start that because I just graduated. I was like 20. And so I took an extra year because I had an extra year of college left. But before that, I sent in my resume to Her Interactive to apply for a job as a screenwriter in their video games because I had been a longtime fan and I knew that they had an internship program, and all the interns, all the videos that I saw online, everyone looked super happy, super fun. And I'm like, I'd love to work there and be a scriptwriter for their games. So I sent in my resume. I heard back that month and basically it was like, sorry, we don't have anything for you right now. We'll keep your resume on file. And by that time, I was kind of like, okay, I basically, I know what that means. That means no. So I kind of forgot about that. I took an extra year of school and just did some fun classes and really grew kind of into myself. I helped out in the film program as like a teacher's assistant. And then I decided to just go ahead and graduate and see what would happen. And it was a month after I graduated and I wasn't really doing anything that I got another email from Her Interactive saying, hey, we kept your resume, by the way, and there is a position open here that we think that you'd be a great fit for. Would you like to interview for it? And I'm like, yes, yes, I would. And this was all through email. And so I set up our first, because I live on the other side of the state, so it wasn't too bad. But our first interview was actually on the phone, and I spoke with Jared, and he was so nice. I got to geek out about Nancy Drew for about half the interview, and then the other half, was going through, what I would contribute to the company, etc. But it was really easy to talk to him about everything about, my life and about my fandom and about my work, which is always a good sign when you're talking to anyone of importance in a business. And then he's like, well, is it possible that you could, come over here and we could interview you in person, you could meet the team, etc. And I'm like, sure. And so I think it was like a week later, made the trip over. It was only about 4 hours. My mom came and my little brother and my dog, and we came over and I got to interview. And when I first walked in the office, though, I was already nervous, but I was super nervous because that's when it became real. Like, I could actually work at Her Interactive, and I've been playing these games since I was like 8. I was like, wow. And and you first walk in and there's all this there's like fan art, and then there's all these Nancy Drew games and all these awards on the walls and all these posters, and it's all like, okay, I'm actually here. But I met with Jared and met Tess, and they were just so welcoming, just for the interview. I hadn't even gotten the job yet, and they were so nice. They listened to me and we talked, and I think, and we all got along, obviously, and it was a good fit. And then not even a month later, I was moved here, and yeah, now I'm working, and it's just been an amazing experience. It's only gotten better too, which is crazy how that could be possible. But yeah, my time here has been very good.
Now that you get to see all the fan art, you get to stay in touch with some of the fans and get to talk with other people who are just as big of Nancy Drew fans too?
Not yet. I think that first interaction I had with fans was on the Twitch. We did Tomb of the Lost Queen, and I'll admit I'm a bit technical savvy when it comes to like filming, but I had never done Twitch before, and so I understood what it was, but I didn't understand exactly, you know, what was happening until all these people started talking to me on there and like asking me questions, and I'm like, oh my god, these are real fans, you know, what should I say? And so that was kind of overwhelming. But then I also, when I released my YouTube videos, I tried to comment and talk with fans on there too. I think my most recent video was like a cupcake video. Someone was asking what they could use instead of coconut for to make it look like rice, and I'm like, you know, use sprinkles. But yeah, hopefully I will you know, get to talk with them more. And
when you finally got to, you know, step through the doors and work there, what were some of your first assignments? I think were the Hauntspot commercials, correct? Or what was one of the first gigs you got?
Yeah, so the first video ad were the Hauntspot ads, so featuring our Halloween games coming up this October. So those were the first ones, and then also that was the video game based ones, but we also did a live shoot where I was actually starring in it. I don't know if you've seen them, but they'll be circling YouTube pretty soon. Me and Tiana actually starred in the live Hauntspot ads. We went over to the Bellevue Botanical Gardens, and there's a beautiful location. It's called the Japanese Gardens, and it looks like it was plucked out of Saw. It looks like it was you're right there at the Ryokan walking through, and so that was a blast to film. It was a small crew, so I was starring in it, but then I was also jumping behind the camera and getting establishing shots, and which I enjoy, because that's pretty much what I'm used to. Usually I'm behind the camera, not necessarily in front of it, so the intern videos that I've been doing, it's been an adjustment, but it's been so much fun. Like I'm glad that I can be doing that and get out of my comfort zone a little bit.
Well, what are your thoughts on the games? Do you have any in particular, like the newer games? What do you think of how far Her Interactive's come? Because you're you know, a fan through and through. What do you like most about how they've innovated and moved forward since then?
One thing that I like is that they've never lost Nancy Drew's character. When you play a Nancy Drew game, you know who the protagonist is. You know who you're playing, and the settings, locations are always amazing. Like I said, the research that goes into the locations and really getting the feel for the game, that's what always pulls me in. You have this amazing, sleuthy and sometimes snoopy main detective who's super smart, and then you have all these interesting characters that have actually good motivations and have great dialogue, and the stories are always just so, yeah, they're just like meticulous. Like there's such a high quality in these games that's why, you know, people who play love them, and why Her has like such a great fan base is because there's just this quality that you get in the time and what you expect from a Nancy Drew game that other games sometimes, you know, are missing, or it isn't as consistent, where I think that the Nancy Drew games have always been consistent for me, and I just love them. I love talking, and I think that it's hard to get that balance between puzzles and talking to people, getting backstory, and also mini games. But there is like but there is like a common, I guess, not formula, but a great mixture in each of the games of all these. Like some games are puzzle heavy, some games are dialogue heavy, but you're never going to get something that's just just dialogue or just too plot driven. It's a good mix, I think, in all of them.
Well, now I have 5 locked clues for you that I'd love for you to help me to unlock. So let's talk about the first Nancy Drew game you ever played.
Yes, that was Danger on Deception Island. And I've told this story before, but I didn't find Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew found me. Or actually, no, my mom found Nancy Drew for me. It was in a Games for Girls packet at Office Depot, and I was not interested in the game at all. I was interested in the other games, and my mom bought it for me, and she really wanted me to play the Nancy Drew game. And so we ended up, eventually when I finished with the other 2 games, we played the Nancy Drew game actually together, and yeah, completely hooked. We loved it, and it kind of became our thing for a while, playing Nancy Drew together. So
okay, so favorite Nancy Drew game?
It changes so often, but I think right now, okay, well, actually, the game that I think that I've played the most is Phantom of Venice, that I keep returning to because I just love it so much. I love Venice. I really want to visit there now, and yeah, I think that when it comes to like ambiance and stuff, I really got sucked into like being a spy, but also being a tourist, and yeah, that was great.
Okay, how about this one? Who are you going to call? Ned Nickerson, the Hardy Boys, or Bess and George?
The Hardy Boys, because then I get a chance to possibly talk to Frank.
What place from one of Nancy's past cases would you like to visit and see for yourself in person? And we'll ex-nay the Venice one. You could pick another one.
Okay. Definitely New Orleans in the Legend of the Crystal Skull. I've always wanted to go. I love gumbo. And so I had Bess eat so much gumbo because I was all like, okay, you can eat this gumbo for me because I'm jealous. But yeah.
And finally, your last question. What character besides Nancy and her friends do you think you would get along with if you met them in person?
Definitely Lupe or Guadalupe Camilo, or I think it's Camillo from White Wolf. Yeah, Lupe, the activist, the animal wolf whisperer lady. I really liked her. I thought she was interesting.
And finally, thank you again, Annie, for being on the show, first of all. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we finally got to talk.
Yes, me too.
And our last question is, if you could describe your experience working with Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would it be?
Incredible.
Dare to play.